Hello,
Hello.
this is Dream Idiots. I'm idiot number one. That's idiot number two. My name is Morris. That's Brian. Each week we tell each other stories, and it's as though you're listening in to us as we tell stories from history, each other's various sordid personal lives, current events, what have you. Brian, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I hear it's cold up there.
It is very
Uh,
cold. Yes, it's the
yes,
it's the late April, early May cold snap we always get.
because
Um,
the last snow of the year often coincides with Mother's Day, right?
Right about then, yeah, right before or after Mother's Day,
God.
somewhere there, mid May, early May, yeah.
And now you know
It,
why I still live in Texas.
it's a small price to pay.
Right. Well,
Uh,
fair enough.
Brian, you have an announcement for us, and maybe you're going to tell folks where they can find us. Is that right?
Yes, I was remiss previously. Friend of the pod, Byron Glickfeld, who was on the episode we did called "A Bullet in the Window Frame" back
Yes.
toward the end of last year. I needed to thank him. He actually gave me the story idea for episode 171, United Airlines Flight 629. And I just wanted to
Oh,
say
cool.
thanks to him for offering up that story idea. He's actually given me a couple other airline related stories, which will be coming later this year. But thanks to Byron for being a listener and a provider of content. So
So he's
it's
got a deal with airplanes, huh?
yeah,
He's got an
maybe
airplane
so.
thing. All right. Okay, just checking.
Maybe he's a nervous flyer. I'm not sure. I'm not certain. But anyway, but we do appreciate you listening and hanging in there with us. Please check out dreamidiots.com for all of our stuff. You can listen to us on Dream Idiots, and also some of our true crime content is now living under just under Crime Idiots on all the platforms. You can drop us a line at dreamidiots.podcast@gmail.com. Shoot us a story idea if you'd like to be thanked on the air. We'll happily thank you as well. Or give us a curse word. And as always, thanks for listening and subscribing and sharing and rating. Give us some ratings. We haven't had any ratings in a while.
Preferably nice ones.
Yeah, ideally.
The thing with Byron and airplanes reminded me there used to be this message board I used to frequent that was about comic books, and there
Mhm.
was one guy, and all he ever did was post stats about airline crashes, nothing to do with comic books, just like today such and such crashed at such and such altitude, and anyway, so yeah, that guy definitely had a thing about
Sounds like
airplane
it.
crashes. We're just finished the first third of a three-parter last week. Are you ready for part two of More Than a Girl and a Gun, Brian?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, I'm going to do a quick recap. Previously on Dream Idiots, Brian, did I ever tell you that I wanted to do a TV show and write it and called Previously On? So when I did the
No.
recaps, I had to say previously on, previously on. Anyway, previously on Dream Idiots, we discussed the films of Brisky Point and its place in cinema history. We met the lead actors, Daria Halpern and Mark Frechette. We discussed the film generally as a critical failure for director Michelangelo Antonioni, although there was praise for the cinematography, particularly the use of Death Valley, California as its backdrop, and for the film's soundtrack. Antonioni went all out in his American Western approach, even dressing like a cowboy, replete with jeans, a Stetson hat, a vest, and boots. Set folks took to calling him San Antonioni, as though he were indeed some sort of Western saint, and gifted him with an accoutrement no cowboy should be without. And so he took to wearing his San Antonioni spurs wherever he went.
Nice.
I apologize profusely for that horrible, horrible joke. For the second part of this story, we move almost as far from Death Valley, California as we can and still be in the contiguous United States. Brian, what do you know about Newport, Rhode Island?
Almost nothing.
Oh, that's good. Because I've got a lot written here about Newport, some of which
Okay.
I knew before I started the story, some I didn't. It,
Well, home of a fairly big jazz festival, I know, right?
yes, that's true, and we'll get to that. Newport was founded in 1639, making it just a scooch older than President Trump. During colonial times, Rhode Island, originally founded by white settlers as the quote, colony of Rhode Island and Providence plantations. It was
Hmm.
perhaps the most tolerant new American colony, given that the founder, Roger Williams, had fled Massachusetts to escape religious persecution there. As a side note, until 2020, the state of Rhode Island was officially called Rhode Island and the Providence Plantations.
Oh, wow.
I did not know that. It wasn't until 2020, and that was the second time they tried to change the name because people argued that, plantations has a really just
It's a
horrific
negative
connotation.
connotation.
Regardless of this, Maryland had Catholics, Massachusetts had Puritans, Pennsylvania had Quakers, but Rhode Island seemed to have a bit of everything, mainly Baptist, but also a population of Quakers, and in a most surprising appearance, Jews.
Hmm.
Newport is, in fact, the site of the first synagogue in what would eventually become the United States. It's called the Truro Synagogue. Founded in 1763, it stands today as the oldest synagogue in North America and the only one still standing from the colonial era.
Oh, wow.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Of all the visits one can make in Newport, mansions along the coast, the Vanderbilt Estate, Hammersmith Farm, which was very important to Jacqueline Bouvier. She was married there to John Kennedy in 1953. The Truro Synagogue presents one of the crucial intersections in American culture, the Jewish and African diasporas. The synagogue was not only a touchstone for Jewish colonists, it was also a stopover on the Underground Railroad. Remember, the fugitive slave laws allowed bounty hunters into free states to search for escaped slaves. So you had to have freeholds even in states that outlawed slavery, right? And if that's not enough, as I learned when I toured the grounds of the Truro Synagogue, that none other than Patrick Stewart once visited there in order to observe Jewish rituals in preparation for an upcoming role. That's pretty cool.
Very
The
cool.
tour guide pointed to a corner of the room. He sat back there taking notes. Being a perpetual questioner, aka a pain in the ass, I raised my hand. I thought you weren't allowed to actually write while in temple, I said, recalling something I had somehow learned by osmosis in a college religious studies class. Ah, yes. Well, in that case, he responded, we made a small exception. And he pointed to a sign in the main hall, written in Hebrew that I had missed earlier. You could push a small button next to it, which launched a pre-recorded message from Patrick Stewart himself, translating the sign. It read, Picard rules, Kirk drools. That was not there, but the whole Patrick Stewart thing was true. Not the sign. Newport has some other cool stuff too. There's the America's Cup, a yacht race held every few years between 1930 and 1987, still goes on today, has not been held in Newport, I think, since 1987. Tons of great restaurants, such as the Black Pearl, fantastic place. Every restaurant there claims to have the best crab cakes in Newport, and they're
Sure.
right. Every restaurant is fantastic.
Right.
It's also where I learned that I am allergic to shellfish. But the thing I associate most with this Rhode Island town are a pair of music festivals, usually held within the same month. The Newport Jazz Festival that you mentioned earlier, extant every year since 1954, with the exception of a stretch from 1970 to 1981, when it was held in New York for some reason that I will not go into here. And then there's the Newport Folk Festival, held in 1959, 1960, and then annually from 1963 until 1969. A period of dormancy began in 1970 and lasted until the Folk Festival's return in 1985. Have you ever been to Newport? You've been
No.
out to New England. You say you've never been to Rhode Island, Providence, or
I've traveled through there. I mean, because on more than one occasion, I've taken a train from Boston to New York or vice versa.
Mhm.
But I don't think we stopped. It's just like straight through.
Yeah.
So it didn't, no, so
If you
no, no,
blink,
not really.
if you blink it, you'll
Yeah.
miss it on a train. Both festivals have their share of memorable performances. For the Jazz Festival, the first that comes to mind is a remarkable one by tenor saxophonist Paul Gonsalves. We learned about this in our jazz class we took in college, Brian.
Hmm.
He was then a member of the Duke Ellington Orchestra. Large ensembles weren't really on the rise in 1957, but Gonsalves, with Ellington pushing him on, took 27 courses of diminuendo and crescendo in blue, causing a near riot of dancing, shouting, and singing from the audience. It's available in many forms to listen to. Check it out if you've never heard it. It's nuts, bonkers, and it's really, really great. I mean, it is just fantastic jazz. But for the folk festival, the most memorable performance would have to be, do you want to take a guess, Brian?
What year?
Just throughout 59, 60, 63 to 69.
Hmm.
Well,
Bob Dylan.
1969 was a big year. Chris Christopherson debuted there. He was introduced
Okay.
by Johnny Cash. James Taylor had his debut the same year in 1969. His
Nice.
set as a newcomer was cut short after only 15 minutes when the concert promoter made an announcement from the stage that, hey, guess what? Men have landed on the moon. Poor James Taylor. But, as you said, it was a 1965 performance by Bob Dylan, with a backing group comprised of the Paul Butterfield Blues Band members that really catches the imagination. This act was called Notorious by the Mojo Collection book. Stephen Thomas Erlewine wrote of the, quote, vicious derision the audience cast upon the group because Dylan had plugged in and gone electric.
Gone electric, yeah.
In March of 65, prior to that year's Newport Folk Festival, Dylan had released the album Bringing It All Back Home, with side 1 featuring electric instruments and side 2 acoustic. In August of 65, Dylan released Highway 61 Revisited, and it was full-blown electric. In between those two albums lay this Newport performance. So it's not like there was a zero chance that he was going to do this, but play electric instruments at the Newport Folk Festival. I'm thinking that up until the time he took the stage, it was probably a big will he or won't he kind of question from the audience. And he did. Dylan and company roared into Like a Rolling Stone, which would come out on the Highway 61 Revisited album a few months later. The numbers on how many patrons got up and walked out during this performance have changed over the years, with several being hyperbolic. Half the crowd and so forth got up and walked out.
500,000.
Yeah, there were 20,000 people at the show. In reality, as near as I can tell, most sources indicate that only about 200 people or so got up and walked out. So 1/100th.
Yeah, tough shit, right? No biggie, right?
Yeah, the folks that were there. Among them, apparently, the erstwhile folk movement leader Pete Seeger got up and left. All right, he's crotchety, he's entitled, whatever. Electric instruments at a folk festival caused a stir. Todd Gitlin remarked in his book, The 60s, Years of Hope, Days of Rage, that Dylan's song, Rainy Day Women 12 and 35, from the 1966 double LP, Blonde on Blonde, contains the line, everybody must get stoned. This refers not only to drugs, but also to the moment when, quote, the great man incurs the wrath of the uncomprehending masses, as in Newport. Can you hear us from way up there on your cross, Bob? But anyway, all those Dylan albums are great. They're right in the meat of his great career. They're fantastic, electric or not. Now, I had figured before I came into the story that Dylan's electric performance was the final one on the evening slate. It was not. So my question to you, Bryan, is this. How would you like to be the miserable bastard or bastards who had to follow that?
Right.
Imagine having to give a speech after Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream. Imagine being the second highest scorer for the Philadelphia Warriors the night Wilt Chamberlain hung 100 points on the New York Knicks in 1962. By the way, it was Al Attles who did that. The poor bastard had an 8-for-8 night, hitting 8 for 8 from the field, and he was 100% from the free throw line with his one free throw, 17 points total. No one remembers that. The only time I can think of being in second place worked out for anybody was for the gunman on the grassy knoll. Anyway, the miserable bastard who actually followed Dylan that night was a 27-year-old fella by the name of Mel Lyman. You ever heard of Mel Lyman?
Mel Lyman? No.
Okay. Mel was an early member of the Boston and Cambridge-based Queskin, and that's Kweskin, named after the leader, Jim, the Queskin Jug Band, where he played banjo and harmonica. Do you know anything about jug band music?
No.
I don't know that much either. You always picture kind of the We're the Bears Who Sing for Duke scene from the Critic cartoon show. Do you ever see that?
Hee-haw.
drinking moonshine till we puke. Yeah, hee-haw. Jug band was a musical genre that popped up in the early 60s. From David Brown's 2024 book, and what I've read of it is excellent, Talkin' Greenwich Village, the heady rise and slow fall of America's bohemian music capital, an observation. Quote, in the summer of 1963, jug bands were suddenly trending. Made with kazoos, washboards, and stringed instruments, jug was a type of novelty roots music that didn't take itself too seriously, even if genuine musicianship was involved. Okay. I also picture, like, in addition to the those instruments, I also picture the, of course, a jug, an empty ceramic jug that one might blow in with big X's on it. I picture the washboard, a wash tub with a broom handle. The little mouth harp, or a wash tub turned upside down with a broom handle stuck in it for a single bass upright bass, like that scene in MASH where they're singing My Blue Heaven
Mm.
and Houlihan is horrifically off tune. The Grateful Dead started off life pretty much. I think three of the initial six members of Grateful Dead were part of Mother McCree's Uptown Jug Champions. They started off as a jug band.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of crossover in different musical styles of the '60s, and you had a jug band in New York that was big, and then the Queskin Jug Band out of Boston that was big. What had been the Grateful Dead out on the West Coast, or what had been Mother McCree rather, became the Grateful Dead. So Mel Lyman had to take the stage after Dylan. He performed a 10, some sources say as long as 20-minute instrumental solo rendition of Rock of Ages that night, to a no doubt still energized field of about 19,800 people. One magazine even touted his, quote, mournful and lonesome harmonica performance as, quote, the most optimistic note of the evening. That's not bad to go out with a
Right.
harmonica, sit, and recapture and refocus everyone's attention. Now, Mel Lyman is an interesting cat. He had come to Newport that night following his own odd singular path. A native Northern Californian, Lyman had traveled across the United States in the early 60s. He spent a significant amount of time in North Carolina studying and playing folk, blues, and other genres endemic to the area, what we might call in general, to quote, oh brother, we're out there, old-timey music,
Right.
right? He was out there for a while. He would end up playing venues in Greenwich Village as well as in Boston, making a coffee house there called the New Orleans Coffee House his home base. So the New Orleans Coffee House in Boston. He followed a woman to Boston in early 1963. I don't think it was harassment. I think she wanted him to. Her name was Judy Silver. And from what I can tell, she was the love of his life. And they were happy together for a while until they came into contact with a Timothy Leary led group called the International Foundation for Internal Freedom,
Mm.
or IF. What do you suspect was involved with IF?
Well, I'm guessing some LSD.
Oh my, yes.
Yes.
Judy became, in the parlance of the times, an acid casualty.
Right.
She
Turn
returned to her.
on. Hmm.
She went too far, saw too much, and crashed. She returned to her family in the Midwest in her home state of Kansas, and she left behind a heartbroken Mel in Boston in the summer of 1963. So their love, if they moved out there in early 63, their love burned hot and heavy and fast.
Right.
And his sorrow seemed to fuel the rest of his life. That's my opinion. No one else's, as far as I can tell. Mel dabbled in filmmaking for a while in New York City, working alongside folks like Jonas Mekas, Andy Warhol. He also wrote a book. I've not read it. But the title gives me pause, particularly in light of what Lyman's about to get up to in Fort Hill in Boston. The book is called The Autobiography of a World Savior.
Uh-oh.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, indeed. It was published in 1966. Lyman had built up a sizable following from his appearance at the New Orleans Coffee House in Boston, and not just for his music. He discussed his writings, religious beliefs, and philosophy with his audience. You're nodding.
Mm-hmm.
You know where this is
I'm
going.
guessing where this is going. Yeah.
It's probably no coincidence that Lyman founded his intentional community the same year he published Autobiography of a World Savior. He purchased lots in the Fort Hill section of the Roxbury in Boston. This particular neighborhood had been the heart of the black community in Boston since the 1940s. So here comes a white dude buying property and moving in, and bringing in with him what I assume would be other white folks.
Right.
In what would become known as the Lyman family, people looked to Mel for spiritual guidance, sort of a white hippie commune in the heart of black Boston. Jim Queskin, he of the jug band fame, was a follower. The group seems to have been a blend of LSD, marijuana, and Mel's interests in transcendentalism and millennialism. We'll get into the specifics of exactly how the family was organized and operated next time for part 3. But what's interesting about this is that for a while, from 1966 onward or so, a young Bostonian had been trying without success to become a member of Lyman's family up in Fort Hill. He had applied several times and been turned away. He returned again in the early 1970s with his girlfriend in tow. Mark Frechette, amateur actor, hoped that his status as the male lead of the film Zabriskie Point and his relationship with his co-star, Daria Halpern, would finally convince Lyman to let him join.
Hmm.
After all, Frechette and Halpern were now known in the popular press as, quote, America's counterculture couple. The third and final part next week, things get even stranger as we wrap up this story of More Than a Girl and a Gun. This was part two. Part three is next time, and we'll see exactly where all this is going. And I can tell you, Bryan, it's going nowhere good.
Yeah, I'm sensing it. Very cool.
Um, yeah. So next time we'll talk a little bit about Roxbury in Boston. We'll talk a little bit about their beliefs. We'll talk about what Mark and Daria got up to after Zabriskie Point came out. And we might even talk about Dick Cavett and maybe even Randy Newman. All right. And I'll
All
stop
right.
there.
Very cool. Thank you. That's yeah, super interesting. I'm dying for part three.
Oh, poor choice of words, my friend.
Good.
Speaking of poor choice of words, what do we have for a curse word of the week?
So, does the name Susie Dent ring a bell?
Susie Dent. Is she any relation to Richard Dent or Harvey Dent?
No,
Okay.
not at all. So Susie Dent is, I think her title is resident lexicographer. She is an author. She appears on a show called Countdown. It's a BBC panel show,
Okay.
and basically she's a wordsmith. I think she has an Oxbridge education. Very very smart woman. She's put out 15 books, 13
Oh,
books.
wow.
I have 4 or 5 of them. And she could weirdly, she sort of advocates for words, and she'll do top 10 lists of forgotten words that we should bring back, and here are great words that where their opposite is the same word. I mean, I've used her in the past
Mm-hmm.
on a few different occasions, and she puts out random lists of her favorite words or words of the year, etc. So thank you to Susie Dent. She's amazing. Her books are, for a lot of folks, I'm sure come across as being painfully dull, but I find them interesting and incredibly funny some of the time. And so occasionally she'll put out lists of words that are have become disused that she thinks need to come back. These are not this is not the curse word of the week, but a couple words on a recent top 10 list of hers that she was advocating for. The word interdespise, to loathe someone as much as they loathe you.
Oh, that's good.
So a term for mutual dislike, interdespise. Latibulate. So a latibule is basically a hiding place, a hidey hole, a little corner. So to latibulate is to find a corner and hide in it.
Okay.
So
All
yeah,
right.
like that.
I do
And
that
so,
every
but
night.
right. So the curse word of the week is I saw this, and it just seemed like the most spot on Dream Idiots curse word of all time. The word is constult. She defines it, her text description, whether it's a night out, the office away day, or a government cabinet meeting, consulting is a pithy way of describing a joint exercise in idiocy.
Consulting.
Uh-huh. So you and I are consultants.
Stult me being the word there. Stult being the
Consult, right. Mhm.
word for the part of the word that stands for idiocy or
Uh-huh. Yeah.
consulting.
Yeah. So I like that.
So our government right now consists of some highly agile and effective consultants.
Yes, very much so, yeah.
I like that a lot. That's good.
So there you
That's
have it.
good. Thank you, Susie Dent. And may I suggest to you that we bring back one of Bryan's phrases to describe somebody in public who's absolutely nuts. And I use this all the time since you brought it up with me a couple of years ago. Batshit yokel is still one of the best phrases I ever heard to describe your local nutty neighbor or someone in your neighborhood or
Hmm.
area who's just always doing something absolutely, utterly insane.
Hmm.
All
Yes,
right.
very fitting.
Well, we're proud to be your consultants here at Dream Idiots. Um, been a rough few days here, especially if you were at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
Yep.
Rougher for some than others. Apparently, there was a shot of a dude just he continues to eat, just sit there, just kept eating. Just
Yeah, it's so I actually didn't believe that when I saw a write about it and I watched it, and so folks are ducking down, hiding, and trying to figure out. He is sitting in his chair, pushed back from his plate, and he grabs a spoon, reaches out and grabs. It's hilarious actually. Whatever.
almost like he maybe knew something. No, I'm not going to
Right?
speculate. I'm
Yeah,
not going
yeah.
to speculate. Anyway, yeah, so that's it for this episode. Thanks so much for listening. We will be here next week. We hope you are too. Please continue to be good to each other. It's so important in this. This is the time of year too where have some neighbors over, even if it's in your front yard. Just sit around and drink some beer or some iced tea and just reach out a helping hand. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just it's absolutely essential we start doing that. Rebuild our neighborhoods because I think that's where it's all going to start in rebuilding this mess once everything is better.
Yeah,
I hope.
great advice. Thanks for listening, folks. As
Yeah,
always, give us a review, like, share, subscribe. Check out dreamidiots.com. Check out Crime Idiots where all the true crime content lives. We will have a couple things coming up just on Crime Idiots eventually. And as always, thanks for listening and hanging in there with us.
that's right. Be good to each other, and I'm going to say it here. Go Spurs.
Go Spurs, go.